What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode. This is the solo four-man hardcore group Iron. So, what we have been getting at here lately is I've actually been moving into some corrupted Gauntlet. So, my last couple of videos have been showcasing some of the raids that I was working on. I was trying to get some purples at Tombs of a Basket, and was also spending some time at Chambers of Zarek. Now, I do really like my gear for Chambers of Zarek, but my ranged weaponry is lacking. So here we are. We're trying to go for a bow of Faradin, that is obviously known as the Bofa. So it's basically just a stronger crystal bow. Crystal bow is always known for its high accuracy, um, but it doesn't have the highest damage output because its max hit is fairly inadequate compared to a lot of other ranged weapons like Twisted Bow or even just like a Ruby Bolt proc. So yeah, we have been sending some Corrupted Gauntlet. I did manage to get one singular armor seed, as well as one normal weapon seed. But overall, I'm going fairly dry. I'm over 100 kill counts so far. And I think this is where I'm just going to be camping here for the Bofa because this is going to be an insanely powerful ranged upgrade from Rune Crossbow. The Rune Crossbow is just very outdated. A lot of ranged weaponry has far surpassed it, like the blowpipe, the Bofa, the Twisted Bow, Zerite crossbow. But since we can't do next, the Zerite crossbow will be off limits. Twisted bow is obviously extremely rare, so our next go-to, and we have the blowpipe. However, the blowpipe did receive a massive nerf. So the blowpipe received a huge nerf. Um, I want to say a year or so ago, probably about 2 years ago, and what they did was they nerfed the accuracy tremendously. Now, the max hit is still okay with high tier darts, but the overall accuracy has dropped significantly, with a little bit of a hit to its max hit, making it just not the most optimal DPS weapon in a lot of scenarios as far as rating or anything with a significant defense level. So the go-to after that has been rune crossbowing, for example, the Olm head. Right, the Olm head has a bit of defense, and you end up you would rather rune crossbow it and hope for Ruby Bolt procs than sit there and blow pipe. Especially with the 2-tick speed, you get a lot of hits back from Olm, having to stop every 2 ticks to fire off a dart. It ends up just not being the best range weapon to just have as a solo weapon. I will still bring it into raids because it's good DPS on low defense targets. However, the Bofa will be my next huge goal. Go for this account. This is my main raiding account, and I will corrupt it, which allows it to go from a charged weapon to an infinite ammo weapon. Just have infinite ammunition from the bow, and that's insanely nice also for just any Ironman in general. Ironmen are always using their own time to get supplies for their weapons, their armor, their potions, food. So having something that's just guaranteed to be basically free forever. That's a huge quality of life upgrade. So let's go ahead and jump into Gauntlet real quick just on the side. I am woodcutting AFK on the other three accounts and doing some fletching, just some bank standing or AFK skills because the Gauntlet, especially the Corrupted Gauntlet, requires the majority of your attention in most cases. So it's similar to raiding in which case I cannot really do anything significant on the other alts, but especially being a hardcore. If you're a hardcore as well in Gauntlet, it is extremely dangerous. But going for the tier 3 armor prep definitely allows you to have a bit of a safety net when taking damage. So basically in the Gauntlet, you go in and you are completely naked, so you will have no items on you at all except for some starter, pestle, mortar, and axe and pickaxe to start gathering supplies. And it's pretty much like a small little dungeoneering session where you run around and you collect your own resources and then you craft your own weapon and armor to actually fight the boss, and you're on a timer to collect all these items. So basically you have to go and try to collect 13 of each resource for tier 3. It's only 7 of each resource for tier 2 armor, and then it's only 3 of each resource for tier 1 armor. But obviously, the tier 3 armor is much more powerful in defending from the Hunlift fight. And if you're a hardcore, I highly suggest only ever doing tier 3 preps. Tier 2 is just that sketchy scenario where you take a significant amount of damage from minor mistakes and you could get stacked out very easily in the Hunlift fight. There's tornadoes that chase you, as well as the ground hits a lot harder when you have a lower tier of armor. So I will need to get 13 of each resource, and I only have 7.5 minutes to prep. So I will do my best to kind of commentate what's going on as it happens. So the first thing you want to start out is just check one of these side rooms. Go left or right from the Hunlift. Don't ever go directly opposite the Hunlift, and then make a U-shape pattern around the starter room, and then in between collecting resources after you get the XP drop from picking the wool. Then you can bop an enemy nearby if he is close enough, and it allows you to hit the monster and then collect the resource and sort of weave in those attacks rather than just sit there and attack and do nothing in between. It's these small little things that will add up and allow you to effectively complete all your preparation in time for the boss fight at the end. So getting a lot of trees here at the start, so I'm kind of going to skip one of these. I don't want to fill up my entire inventory just on trees. I need a weapon frame from a monster early on, so I got that already, so that's good. I will need 80 total shards to upgrade it to a tier 2 weapon. I would always recommend everyone making a staff right off the bat, because the staff will be just the strongest max hit, so that's going to be hotkey 7, and then make as much armor as you possibly can to avoid having to drop materials. So I will still have to drop a lot of this material because I will come back for it later, so I'm going to actually kill this wolf real quick, go back, finish making a full set of tier 1 armor, equip it, grab some vials, and then I want to set off looking for demi-bosses. Now, demi-bosses require you to go to the outskirts of the entire room. The room is just one giant grid. I showed you this little map right there. Effectively, you're in the center, and you need to just work your way to the outside to find demi-bosses. The reason you need to find these demi-bosses is because they are the only way you can upgrade your weapons from tier 2 to a tier 3. And I would highly suggest never trying to fight Hunleaf with only tier 2 weapons. It's just much slower, and it's going to require you to have more prayer, more food. So we found our first demi-boss. They're each melee, mage, and ranged type. This is the melee bear. He will drop the melee upgrade, so the halberd. However, I like to make the two styles of weaponry in ranged and magic. You can make a halberd, but it requires you to be within 1 or 2 tiles of melee distance to use in the Hunlift fight. So it is much harder to do, and it will require your positioning to be perfect in most scenarios. Especially when you're dodging the tornadoes, that's going to come into play. So I typically will not make the halberd. And then after this, I'm pretty much going to be full on supplies. I won't be able to farm anything else into my inventory just yet, so I am going to use my 1 teleport crystal back. Make sure that you make another teleport crystal when you set back out, because you do not want to be on the outskirts of the entire room with no way to teleport back in. So then I want to go to a different direction. I believe I went west to the wall, so now I'm going to go straight north to the wall. Okay, here is the last of my wood. I have a nice little plugin called the Gauntlet. Just literally search in the plugin hub. It's called the Gauntlet, and it gives me a nice little tracker up at the top left here for how many resources that I have remaining, and then once I complete them, it removes them from that list. Okay, here's the dragon. The dragon is the magic upgrade, so that's good. I guarantee to have my tier 3 staff. And then if you find the same demi-boss twice, so if I find another bear, it guarantees to drop one of the other 2 that you have not found yet. So basically you just need to kill 3 of any demi-boss, and you should have all 3 items. I believe that's how it would work. So yeah, I got the spike, which was from the melee one. I actually pestle mortared it, which gives you 80 shards, so that's excellent to get enough shards because you need enough shards to make the armor and upgrade the weapons. So make sure you're killing small little monsters along the way, like unicorns, scorpions, and the wolves, the medium tier type of monster, typically are the best to farm shards. And then the demi bosses also drop a nice chunk of shards. Okay, it looks like this is the last of the wool. It's the linum, so I will finish by collecting one more of that. And there's a nice rock. So it looks like I've collected all of my resources. So once you've done that, you can drop your axe and pickaxe. And now I am just searching for fish, for food. I have my final herb here, and it looks like I might need some shards, but typically I have a tracker. It says I need 163 more shards. I have it set to also craft something called an escape crystal inside the gauntlet, and it gives you a one-click teleport, kind of like the ecto file or a house tab that you can bring into the Hunlift in case you get into a sticky scenario. So I don't actually need all of these shards. I can be about 200 short and still have enough. So I will finish fishing as much as I can carry here in my inventory. Let's just kill that spider so it doesn't annoy us. One of the only nodes that gets interrupted by weird things like getting hit by a monster is the fishing. The other nodes allow you to easily obtain resources from them uninterrupted. So just going to get an overkill amount of fish. With tier 3 armor, I do not need this much fish usually, but because I'm recording, I want this to work out. I'm just going to get as much as I can, have a little bit extra. So let's use the orb and bowstring there to fully upgrade my 2 weapons. They turn into red tier 3 perfected weaponry. Let's just continue to upgrade the armor. So it's basically I'm picking up all of the resources that I had looted from the start, and we're just finishing off making all of our armor upgraded, and that should use all the supplies. They're all completely gone, which is nice to see. And I even have enough shards. I have 200. I can make that far end teleport crystal that will just hang in the bottom of my inventory. If I for some reason have a panic where I get kind of cornered by the tornadoes in the floor and Hunlift, and I just would rather not risk trying to out-eat any of his damage, I can't escape with that. However, you can just right-click and escape on the barriers here, and it should just instantly leave you. However, it's not always as go-to of an idea. So basically, Hunlift attacks every 4 attacks. He switches styles, and he does a little jiggle animation every time he swaps. So watch his next attack. He's going to do a tiny little crystal dance there, which basically shows that he's switching his attack styles. Now that slam was him summoning tornadoes, so he also will summon tornadoes periodically that will chase you, and you need to dance around the room and avoid them by at least a couple tiles. Always give yourself some additional headspace in front of them in order to avoid all damage. And then Hunlift, alongside Hunlift attacking you 4 times and switching, his overhead will swap every 6 times you attack him. So every 6 times I use my attack, he will switch his overhead to the current style that I hit him with last. So basically I'll shoot him 6 times with this bow, and then there he switches to protect range, and I need to switch to my staff. So I'm also alternating. So it's you alternating prayers, him alternating prayers, and then dodging tornadoes. Stay off of the orange floor tile. Every time the floor switches, it is temporarily safe until it turns solid orange like that, and then it is no longer safe. So in the end of the fight, as you get Hunlift down to about 1/3 health, his attacks become more rapid, meaning he will summon tornadoes very frequently. He will summon more of them, and the floor tile switches very, very rapidly. So highly suggest that you just, once he summons tornadoes, if you are not confident with getting attacks in between movements, I would recommend just dodging tornadoes until you're more comfortable at the gauntlet, and then work on trying to get, bow hits and staff attacks in between movements. You definitely do not want to get caught with all the tornadoes on you, as they will just rapidly damage you every single like 2 game ticks for a full stack of four times their damage. And yeah, after this point, he's fairly low. You just gotta keep switching your prayers, and he's probably gonna summon tornadoes one more time. And there you go. As the highlight goes away, that is the full kill, and then you may loot the chest. So this is where you can get a armor seed. You can get the enhanced crystal weapon seed, which will be turned into a Bofa or a Blade of Saildor, and then there's also some just normal weapon seeds, which the normal weapon seeds are kind of junk. I believe they can be turned into a crystal Halley or a crystal bow or shield. However, you can just buy those items anyway, so you're not really getting anything unique from Gauntlet from those. However, the crystal armor seeds are very valuable. They're worth a few mil. So this is actually a good moneymaker for mains, especially because the enhanced seed is like 130 mil. It holds its value pretty high as the Bofa is extremely powerful. So yeah, it's a great moneymaker if you don't have very much gear, because literally every account is equal in here. As soon as you enter, you have nothing. You have no items, and nothing you have from outside of the gauntlet can affect what you do in here, except for the raid prayers. So obviously your stats like my attack, strength, defense. That's why it's very nice that I'm literally max combat. Having higher prayer is obviously helpful. 90 prayer makes it very luxurious to where I only need 2 herbs worth of potions. If you're only 70 through 80 prayer, you might want a third herb to make a third potion, because your prayer will run low if you don't have that high of a base level. And then things like Rigor and Augury. Rigor and Augury are 2 unlocks that you get from Chambers of Xeric, and they will help you in here outside of the gauntlet. No gear you have outside that you can have a twisted bow, full Masori, a shadow, full ancestral. None of that will matter in the gauntlet. So, but those prayers do help, and your raw stats. So 99 strength. It doesn't sound like much, but having 99 strength just to slap the initial couple spiders and rats with this corrupted scepter to get your first weapon frame. I have a max hit of 17 with piety, and I know that having less than 90 strength, your max hit's only like 14 or 15. So it doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but it definitely does add up having that max stat. To just hit those higher numbers, you have a little bit easier time at the beginning of each run. You are on a timer every single round, so may as well make the most of it. You can fill vials from the fishing spots, so I'll fill up the vials in between fishing and then spam click immediately after it fills, and I'll actually get a nice little fishing XP drop getting another fish. Just a way, again, you can min-max gathering resources in between other activities that you're working on. Put the herbs in the potions and the vials. So it looks like we're going to finish the linum there as the linum disappears from the top left. And let's grab as much of this wood as we can here. Crush up 2 sets of shards to add to the potions. So after you add the grim leaf into the vials, then you have to crush shards as your secondary, and that makes you the potions. These potions are prayer potions, and they give a stamina effect. So it's effectively just a stam and a prayer restore. You're mostly using it for the prayer, but casually as you do restore your prayer, you will be guaranteed to not run out of run energy in this initial prep phase and Hunlift. You definitely need to have a potion made for the prep. Running from room to room here takes a very long time, and it's a long distance. Therefore, you will definitely run out of run energy if you did not make one at some point in the first few minutes of your prep. So make sure that you always make at least one vial. You can make the rest of the vials later, but you always want at least one vial after the first back. So I'm just killing these last two minions here. These are the medium mobs. Uh, they will drop the best source of shards, so I am going to just kill them off to get a few shards before I fully return back. I can maximize up my staff there and then head out for one more trip. So I need to find a couple of ore spots, and I need to find another demi boss for the bowstring upgrade. So let's see if we can find. Okay, we can't find anything in here. Let's actually pull one of these guys over with us. So another thing is you can kind of drag and pull monsters along with you as you progress, and that allows me to move forward and advance my position while still kind of bringing the resource and killing them alongside. So okay, let's pick up the weapon frame. I still need that. Okay, we're looking for the last demi-boss that we need. There it is. The Dark Beast is the ranged one. He will drop the bowstring that we need. And I want to crush this spike. Typically, when you're in combat, you can't get off the crush, so I'll have to wait until I'm done. But I will crush the spike. That'll give me enough shards alongside what this guy drops. And then I'll just be finishing my resources and fishing, potentially. See, this might be another demi. Okay, it's not, but there is a tree here, so I'm going to, I actually don't need to kill him. Okay, we finished the, I guess I'll just collect these shards just in case. He's very close to being dead anyway, and it looks like here's the rest of our resources. So hopefully we can mine this in time. I have a minute 20. I do have 2 more teleport crystals, which is nice. I picked some up from loots from random monsters. They can definitely drop them at a rare chance. It's not guaranteed, but they can. So I'll try to use that to my advantage here. Okay, as we finish everything there, let's drop some of those. And let's just start making as much of this armor as I can. Finish using all the hotkeys here. Maximize my weapon there, and now I'm looking for fish. So okay, there was a lot of fish there, but there's also some here, so I just ran to the first thing that I kind of got my eyes on. I'm gonna fish at least a couple pulls worth and then use my last teleport crystal to get back. As you can see, the timer is running very low. As soon as this ends, you are force tellied into the Hunlift fight. So if you're not ready in time, that's too bad. You will just be forced in. I am going to have to, after about one fish here, I will tell you out. Click the range here, get off as much cooking as I can, and it looks like I should just cook them in time. I'm not even going to bother running over there because it'll probably just teleport me in as soon as the time runs out. So Hunlift always starts with range, so always pray range first. And then his overhead that he starts with is kind of random. So you'll just have to use whichever style that he's not praying at the start. But he always starts attacking with range, so I know I'm going to protect range at the start no matter what. And that tiny little purple mage ball that he shoots at you, he can only do that when he's maging you. He can randomly, it's like the Vorkath pink flame, or sorry, yeah, it's pink, not purple. It's the same as the in Vorkath, where it disables your overheads. It just actually disables all of your prayers, so just make sure you turn back on your prayers after he shoots that out. And again, that he can only do that in the mage phase, so once he's ranging here, those tiny little shards that are flying at me, that's his range projectile. That can never disable your prayer, and he will never be able to disable them while ranging you. So part of his mage style, he'll typically do it once every time he does his mage rotation of 4 attacks. So just be prepared to turn back on your overheads. As long as your overhead is on, he does heavily reduced damage. I want to say he hits as much as like eights or tens when you correctly pray, but he can hit up to 40s whenever you don't pray correctly. So that's like a 4 times reduction there. Definitely is much more important to get your overhead back on than try to focus on DPSing the boss. The Gauntlet is one of those places where staying alive is most likely more important than just maximizing your DPS, because his attacks come out fairly rapidly, he disables your prayer, and there's a lot of other things in the room you have to dodge. So definitely is a hardcore things you have to watch out for, but I'm fairly safe in the perfected armor. So as you can see, everything is nice and red, perfectly perfected here. The perfected armor, that's the tier 3. Like I said at the beginning, it requires 13 of each resource. It takes a longer amount of time to prepare. However, one good thing about it is, and don't ever run underneath him. As you saw, he rose his feet up and then he actually does a stomp attack. The stomp attack is just guaranteed to hit through your prayer. It's not even melee, so it's just going to hit up to a 40. Obviously there it only hit like an 8, so it was fairly lucky, but one of the things why you never want to just run underneath him. But yeah, the armor that I make, although it does take longer to prep for, I need much less food, so I spend a lot less time fishing the paddlefish and having to cook them, and more time, getting the resources required to get 13 of each to craft the armor. So it does take longer to get 13 of each resource than any of the other tiers of armor upgrades. However, I will save that time in the reduced time fishing that I have to do. So yeah, fairly easy kill. As you can see, I made a couple of mistakes there at the end, and I'm a hardcore, so it kind of gets sketchy. But with the tier 3 armor, it's a fairly safe event. I'll just probably run at least one more here. It's very, sessionable, like whatever you want to call it. Like, just as soon as you loot the chest, just run right back in, and that's typically what I do. I just want to, oops, don't know why I dropped that, but I want to basically just get as many KC as I can in a short amount of time here. The runs are about 10 to 12 minutes, depending on your stats and stuff. Having higher range is always beneficial, so I'm on 97 range. I'm very near max with rigor. My bow can hit 40s. I know that with about 85-ish range and eagle eye, you only hit like 35s, 34s. So there you can see the difference in the damage output is I have about 5 more max hits with rigor and a high stat line than somebody with much lower stats and no rigor. And that's going to speed up the Hunlift kill. That's going to speed up the prep time here. It's going to help out in the Gauntlet in general. It's all about your base stats, really, at the end of the day. Because that's all you have going in. You are completely naked from the start, so you have to basically build your own supplies. So as I'm just gathering resources, you do get shards randomly while collecting from the resource nodes. So that is where the majority of my shards have come from, and you can get some extra ones by bopping some of these little monsters. I'm trying to get up to 200 to make several armor pieces, but it looks like I didn't fully get that much, so I will have to only make 2 sets of armor, and I will just drop the rest of these resources. So I could have killed this wolf that was standing right here. Probably would have been worthwhile, and it would have given me enough shards to not have to drop as much, but that's fine. Actually, I'm pulling the entire crew of these mid-tier mobs. The starting rooms nearby had a ton of them, I guess, so I'm definitely going to be good on shards this round. Not sure you typically always want that many, but I'm good on shards now, so now it's just going to be hunting demi-bosses and finishing resources. I'm definitely no longer going to need to hunt for shards. Typically, you do need to kill about a couple rooms worth of the mid tiers. Again, there's the mid tier mobs and but I already have shards, so I'm not going to bother wasting time on them. I'm just going to be looking for demi bosses. Misclicked that frame, unfortunately, but every single demi boss always drops a new frame, so I can just pick up my new frame. You might be wondering, well, wait, you already made a weapon. Why do you need another frame? It's because I'm making two weapons, so you need two styles to do Hunlift because he will always pray what you attacked him after hitting him 6 times. So if I only have one weapon, then he would just pray that after 6 attacks, and then I would never be able to damage him again. So you have to make at least two styles. I prefer ranged and magic because it allows me to attack from anywhere in the room. This is important for dodging the floor and the tornadoes, so I can always just click back on Hunlift and it's guaranteed that my attack will go off. Whereas melee, you have to make sure you're also close enough, and that can be extremely annoying and difficult actually to pull off. It's also dangerous in general, so highly recommend if you are learning or are a hardcore Ironman, definitely do the two distance styles. So instead of dropping all these resources, I'm going to try to pick up the ones that I'm missing here. It looks like I was able to do that. And then it looks like I'm just short on ore right now, so I'm going to have to just drop the rest of that. Unfortunately, I don't have enough ore to complete the other sets, as I'm missing 7 up here, as this indicates. So I had to just drop those resources, even though I have shards to make more armor. I typically don't want to fish until I'm at the end of my timer, but because I only need 7 ore, I'm going to start gathering some of this fish. And while gathering some of the fish, I'm going to get some crystal shards that are needed to finish off making armor and such. So here's one mining node. I needed 7. Each node only gives 3. So to get 7 that I'm missing, I would need 3 nodes. 2 would get me to 6, and then I will need to mine one singular ore from the final node. That's typically how it always works with the 13 resources. It's going to be 4 nodes fully mined out, and then you will have to find one additional node, so a 5th node, and just literally bop like one resource off of it. So I've already crushed my dust here to make the potions, and I've crushed the spike for shards from the bear. And I have all my demi bosses cleared, so I'm just going to be searching for this last remaining ore. After I crushed the 2 things that I need, I can drop my pestle and mortar. And there it is, there's the mining. So I already have all of my wood. I could have dropped the axe probably ages ago, just not realizing it. That helps you save inventory space, but just make sure you don't drop any tool that you still need. Because obviously you can still obtain it from the center here by just clicking the center, take from tool storage, and it's hotkey number 6. So you can still gather it again that way. But obviously you have to be in the center of the starting area to be able to reobtain them. Okay, looks like I'm just finishing up crafting there. I do have 200 extra, so after all my armor is done, I will make 200 extra. If I have 200 shards left over, I will turn into this escape crystal again. That's just like a little kind of ectophile, one-click telly out. So I'm going to try to explain one last part of the Hunlift fight here. So you want Hunlift positioned one space away from the wall in 2 directions. So right now he's hugging the wall completely and he's 2 spaces off. So I want to find his southwest tile and use that to my advantage. So with his southwest tile, I can drag him into the correct location. As you saw, I dragged him the wrong direction. If I would have dragged him away from that wall but up towards this side, then he would have been 1 off in 2 directions. That would have been ideal positioning. However, he is now 3 off and 1 off, which means I have a lot less room in the center of the area. He's blocking a large portion of it. You really want him closer to the corner, but one off. The one tile away from the wall allows you to slip behind him. So as you can see right here, like I'll show right now, see I can go right alongside him and I'm not underneath him getting stomped. So that's really important. And then you don't really need him any further from the wall because one tile is just as good as any in terms of me slipping by. But the further away from the wall he is in any direction, the more he sort of clutters the very center of the room, and the central area can typically be a large open safe area from floor tiles. So sometimes you need to utilize a large area in the center of the room to dodge floor patterns later on in the fight. But that's okay, he should be fine now. If you also would like to move him further in between his attacks, you can step underneath Hunlif and then run away 2 tiles out. So step underneath his current location temporarily in between his attacks so you don't get stomped, and then he should shift by 1 tile every time you do this. So it's random which way he moves, but I actually got him to move correctly in the one direction that I wanted, so I'm no longer going to move him. But typically that won't always happen, so you might have to do that several times to position him where you want. I would suggest doing this at the very start of the fight when there are less tornado spawns and the floor patterns aren't moving as rapidly, so definitely best to get his positioning sort of figured out at the start or somewhere in the middle. And then as you get to the end part here, the floor is going to change very rapidly and there's going to be 4 tornadoes, so I won't really have the time to spend trying to mess around getting his position better. So I'm just prioritizing dodging the tornadoes. Eventually they despawn and then I'll move to here. So these tiles I have marked, the yellow tiles, I'm talking about my yellow highlighted tiles, not the floor pattern. The 2 tiles that I have marked here in sort of this plus sign shape, so not the singular corner ones, these are safe spots for the final third of his health. Safe spots from the floor tiles. So basically the floor pattern will never spawn on those tiles. And so what they are is they're 3 away from the door. So 1, 2, 3, and then it's the 2 tiles back and forth. And that works for any 4 doorways. So those are safe spots from the floor patterns in the final third of Hunlif's health. So that's very important to know. You can kind of chill there and you know you're good from the floor pattern. And then when tornadoes spawn, you will have to move, but in between tornado spawns, you know that you're always safe there. So let's hope we get something. Okay, nothing there. That is rather unfortunate, but it's a very repeatable sort of little mini game. You know, you can go in, you can leave when you want. Like I can go in if, say, I start prepping and I make some mistakes, or I get bad luck, I just can't get a weapon frame or find enough resources. You can just exit. There's no cost. You can even leave the Hunlif fight by right-clicking and escaping from the barriers. So, yeah, but this is where I will be going and obtaining my Bofa. So I have, let's see what kill count was that. That was 128. So I have 128 corrupted gauntlets done so far. I will obviously keep doing them, and hopefully we get the enhanced crystal weapon seed to make the Bofa, and then it costs like 2,100 shards to corrupt, or no, it's about 2,000 shards to corrupt it. Making the bow costs I think 100 shards, but it puts 10,000 charges on the weapon, and then to corrupt it you need to reach 200,000 charges, which ends up being an additional 1,900 shards. So I was thinking, oh, it was 2,100, but no, it's that first 100 that you use to actually turn it into a Bofa applies, that 5% of the cost to corrupt it, and then corrupting it makes it that infinitely charged weapon. Otherwise, you can just charge it normally with crystal shards and use it to fire off attacks. It costs one charge every attack, so a crystal shard gives you 100 attacks or 100 charges. If you're a main account, I would highly recommend never corrupting this thing. I have seen so many people corrupt it and then want to sell it or trade it, so you have to lose and uncorrupt all those charges that you added. Typically, you are not going to use 200,000 charges before you make that decision. So, if you're an Ironman who is dead set on keeping this item forever and you are never going to sell it or drop it off, then I would suggest corrupting it with 2,000 charges, 2,000 shards. Otherwise, if you're a main, just charge it normally. The shards are very cheap and they add a lot of charges per shard. Just throw like a couple hundred shards in, and that will be like 30 to 40,000 charges. You will have a hard time using that many in raids and such. It would take you probably close to a year worth of solid raiding to use 200,000 charges. So if you're a main account who's not sure that you're going to keep this thing forever, definitely do not corrupt it right away. It is perfectly fine and it's fairly cheap to just use charges normally. But yeah, it also works really well with the armor. So I could actually go make. I could go make the helmet and show you how to make the helmet. However, I do not want to actually make the helmet yet. In the instance where I don't get enough seeds to make the full armor, I would rather make the helmet last because it's the least useful of the equipment. I will need 3 seeds, crystal armor seeds, to make the body, 2 to make the legs, and then 1 to make the helmet. So technically I could make the helmet, but it's the worst of the 3 because in a lot of raid scenarios I'm going to be wearing the Knight's Knot face guard for prayer and strength bonus. And for all around, it's just a good tribrid helmet. If I equip this, it has no negative stats, so it doesn't lower my magic or ranged accuracy bonus, which is nice. And then, so I will just be bringing like Bando's chestplate and Tassie's for melee. I'll bring Aram's top and bottom for mage, and I'll bring crystal body and legs for ranged. So I might actually be using the Bofo without the helmet, and so I will make that last. I will probably make it anyway. There will be places where I just camp all 3 pieces of the crystal armor. The crystal armor adds a % bonus per piece, and it is better the stronger the pieces. So the body is the strongest of the 3, the legs is in between, and the helmet is the weakest. These pieces of crystal armor amplify the Bofa as well as the normal crystal bow, but again, it's mostly important on the Bofa because the base crystal bow is not that strong. So it basically amplifies the Bofa's damage and accuracy tremendously. It's a 30% with the full set to accuracy and 15% to damage. So if you look at Rigor is 23% accuracy it's 23% ranged damage strength, and then it's 20% accuracy. So the crystal armor is effectively like another just huge amount of boost. It's like Rigor. It's 30% accuracy, 15% strength bonus to your ranged weapon. So really powerful to use the Bofo with crystal armor. In fact, that's kind of the only place that it is actually worth it. The Bofa is pretty weak without the crystal armor. However, you can still use it, and it's effectively like a crystal bow. So anyway, I'm going to be kind of wrapping up the video. Just wanted to show off some of the Gauntlet. Hopefully I get the enhanced seeds soon, but I still will need 2,000 shards, closing in on like a few hundred here. I have some in the bank, so this isn't all of it, but I have been just camping this area. Some of the stacks of loot are getting up there. I have over 8 mil cash. A few thousand of each rune. Obviously, these 10,000 natures were probably brought from my bank, so I probably only got like 2,000, but you're getting like 1 to 2,000 of every type of rune. Uncut gems, arrows, myth and addy arrows are useless, but rune are nice for bank value, and alchables. Dragon arrows are insanely nice for eventually getting a twisted bow. And then just tons of rune items like these rune skirts,
battle staves, plate bodies. There's all kinds of rune items that you just alch, and that's where the cash comes from. So that's sort of the gauntlet in a nutshell. I will be wrapping the video up, so I do thank everybody for tuning in. Uh, Check the description down below if you would like to follow me on Kick and Twitch. I do occasionally stream on both platforms, so if you drop me a follow, whichever you currently view, you may see me go live. I will be favoring Kick for the most part because uh, the category for OSRS is a lot less saturated, so you can actually kind of get your stream out there and get seen. But yeah, anyway, I will be continuing to make YouTube videos alongside. So yeah, streaming when I can and making YouTube videos weekly. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Drop a comment and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you liked, and I will see you on the next video. Peace.